You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
So I'm fired up about today's topic, getting the B2B message right, because it's so central to successful marketing. But first, good to see you, Professor Lowell. How are things down there in the land of Lenny and Squiggy?
It's great. Thank you thank you very much. We're having a beautiful day. It's great up here, and things are good in the world of Wisconsin. So
awesome. Have you noticed I always have a new Wisconsin reference every time?
Yes, you do. Yeah, pretty soon it's going to be you're going to give me a Laverne and Shirley kind of promo intro. You know what I mean, with the music.
That would be great. I should write that down. Yeah. It's like a monsoon here in Austin, Texas.
Is it really?
Which is nice.
Yeah, you guys are getting bad weather.
Yeah, we just call it, hey, the sun's not shining, what's going on? That's odd. But it's good to see you. And today's message, this idea that we've been talking about it for a while, we're coming out with a webinar on this. We'll talk about that a little bit, but it's how to get the B2B message right. And there's a whole methodology behind getting it right. And I think that methodology may not be known to a lot of companies who, they feel like they're, in my experience, it's like we feel like our message doesn't communicate our true greatness to the marketplace, right? Yeah. And then you ask them about how they arrived at the message, and that's a whole nother story. So that's why I'm excited about it. I think it's important. It's an important thing. Why is it so important?
And for our viewers, I mean, I know you're too humble to talk about it, but you, in my opinion, are the expert in this country on this topic. So
Yikes.
I'm excited to get your input on it. I mean, getting the message right, and it's fun. And the viewers don't know this, but there's a lot of times behind the scenes where I'll come up with something, and then all of a sudden you do your magic, and it sounds so good. You can put the name of a podcast or
right. I am the best in the county. You're right.
You are.
Yes, sir.
You are. Let's not mention the county because we don't want to differentiate ourselves too much at this point.
So, which county. I think both of us have been sort of owned and ran a B2B business, selling services, which puts even more pressure on your message, right? And so we've had to become good at it, but also because it's our job. Like, unlike the corporate worker or the guy that runs a company, they may have different iterations, or maybe they've pivoted. There's a lot of reasons to refine your message, or maybe they're trying to develop their first message. In our case, we have to know how to do it because we're in the business. It's like if we sold hamburgers and they, tasted like lettuce. You wouldn't stay in business very long. But obviously it's important. And what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about, the webinar coming up is not a presentation about the topic. It's on April 26th, I think, is the first one. It's a whole series of these things. And it's really how to do it. Like here's the methodology, and we'll work with you to figure out how to refine your message, how to develop a message that really, what I used to say in the day was just slaps the prospect upside the face. I mean, does your message do that, right? Does it clearly state what makes you different, right? Does it have a clear position? And you often will hear about, does it resonate with the target audience, right?
Does it hit one of their hot buttons, Pete, or solve a problem that they're struggling with, or is it, like we've talked about so many times, is it the same as everybody else's, but we think ours is awesome?
Right.
But it's generic. It sounds
it's
just
more
like everybody else.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Ours is
the new and improved awesome. That's it.
And that speaks to, I think, there are literally requirements that probably should be in a message. When I opened up the podcast, I said it's the podcast that helps you make more informed marketing decisions and avoid getting ripped off in the crazy dumpster fire we call the marketing industry. Now, if you're an engineer sitting there in your engineering world, that's probably not going to mean a whole lot to you. If you're somebody that's been working with people in the marketing business, maybe you have an agency or maybe you have a marketing consultant or whatever, I just struck you right in the nerve, right below your amygdala. Because it is a
For those of us in
crazy.
Wisconsin, is that the kneecap?
That's right. It's the
Yeah,
kneecap or like the gizzard, somewhere in
thank
there,
you. Okay,
between it.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
but you know, you talk about, we're talking B2B, right? So it has to be businesses. Here's my opinion. It's what I found in practice. Businesses don't buy things unless it solves a problem of some kind,
Right.
right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so it seems like an important thing that should be in your message. But people often will build their messages around features and benefits. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with it? You tell me.
So much,
I'm
so
not going
much.
to tell
It's
you.
in
I
my
don't know.
opinion, the features and benefit. Well, so much of it is too self-serving. It's like, oh, it's all about us, and maybe it's not as much about the customer. And so I think that that's got to be really key. And like we talked about, what differentiates you from everybody else. So what if you have these features and you have these benefits? What happens if the next engineer, as you were talking about, has those same things? Who cares?
Which
So
they
like what?
probably will and are going to, and probably already do. Technology companies are great for this when it comes to messaging. Uh,
Yeah,
there'll be some very detailed, way under the surface thing about how they code or something like that. That
yeah,
is what their primary differentiator is, and that's a thing very important to them, the developers of the app, but they're not necessarily the customer. So the
yeah,
customer just all they I always explain this to them. All the potential customer and the customers know is what they can see in the
mhm,
public sphere, right? What your
right.
competitors are saying, like,
Yeah,
hey, you might know it's not true. They don't have your information. They're not an insider, right? They have what they're saying. So if you're saying the same things that they are, but you're
right.
like, hey, this little inconsequential thing that you don't care about is the most important thing, you might be disappointed. We're not saying, hey, you guys are dumb, you're getting it wrong. I'm saying you don't get the results that you're looking for. You're frustrated. This describes a lot of companies that come to us. They're frustrated. And a
Yeah,
lot of times, I wouldn't say their message is wrong. A lot of times they don't really have a clear message. It's kind of a jumble,
yeah.
right?
That's what I was going to ask you, Pete. What happens if you get a customer that comes to you and maybe they got 20 things from their message. They go, these are the
Right.
20 things, and they're really excited about it. Now what do we do? Because I believe those 20 things really make me special. So
That's the
help me on
gumbo
that.
method. It's the
Yeah.
gumbo messaging. You know how you know when your food is authentic down in New Orleans? When there's a cigarette butt in there, then you
Oh,
know you got the good stuff. Um,
okay.
yeah, put everything in there. No, you know what? There's a hierarchy and there's a priority, right? And also, you can get 20 different versions of something if you've got 20 different people telling the message if you haven't
Yeah.
really defined it well. And then so I think that's the simple answer is, and so what do you prioritize it against, right? Let me see
Yes.
if I
Yes.
can activate the special slide activation without like creating a disaster of it.
Uh-oh.
So this way
Okay.
Bill can see our slides, because otherwise he can't,
Thank
which is
you.
really fun. I get to mess with his
You get
head
to
a little bit.
keep me in the dark.
I keep you in the dark. So, like I said, April 26th, we're doing a webinar. Hope you check it out. There's a link in the comments. Now, it's not a free webinar, right? Because we can't really cover what we're going to cover free because it took a huge amount of work. We're going to work with you and kind of show you how to do it and work with you so that you come out of it with a refined message, or maybe you had to pivot or whatever your particular message problem is. But I wanted to just mention, so it's called Getting It Right, How to Develop a Message That Customers Can't Resist. You can see that guy's definitely can't resist right there. Good old Tex. And we're going to be talking about the science of it, because there is, like so many things in marketing are psychology based. And we're going to talk about the art part of it. And that's why I think it's such a misunderstood aspect of marketing, because it really takes both of those things. But real quick, I wanted to show this. This is the challenge, I think, in a diagram, a Venn diagram. I love Venn diagrams. The three things that I think you have to get right are: it speaks to a primary pain need of the customer. So if you got 20 of them, right, which one's the primary ones?
Right.
You're going to have to cut it, like cutting
Or,
children.
or what, you could find out from your customers what are the most important or the top three. So you're right.
Right, exactly. Well, how do you know that, right? So there's an approach where you're guessing at these things, and there's an approach that has a little more rigor, which we're going to show you in the webinar on the 26th. We're going to show you what that process looks like. You can do it yourself, but you got to understand the process. So it also needs to differentiate you from competing solutions. Okay, if it's not doing those things plus a third, it's authentic to the offering or value proposition. So in other words, let's say you nail the pain. Let's say you got something super remarkable, revolutionary, amazing, but it's fake. You can't really do it. Not going to work, right? You got to have all three of these things. It makes it a lovely Venn diagram, almost a perfect one, really. Because I make the best Venn diagrams.
And if I can just jump in for just 2 seconds, under that authentic part with the bottom, even for a company to ask themselves, and I know a lot of people are saying, oh, those are hot buttons these days, but the why, like, why am I doing this? Why are we in business? What are we trying to do? That also could get you to start thinking about the authentic value too, like you were talking about, like, why are we really providing this kind of service or this product or whatever? So I think that could help you with that.
Well, I think so. And so the question is back to, you can make a bunch of assumptions around this, or worse, brainstorm. Like, hey, let's just brainstorm. Or you can actually have a level of rigor to your process to arrive at a message. Right. And there's so many different ways to do it. One way that we really lean on is creating a positioning statement. Because although the positioning statement isn't necessarily your marketing message or your sales message, it contains all of the elements of everything you need to craft a message, right? Yeah. And so often, and I'm going to admit this to the whole world here, or at least the 4 people that are watching, so often, I would say almost every big assignment where we get to the point where, it's, mid-process, and I think to myself, I have no idea what the message should be. And I just remind myself, I got to stick to this process, and it's going to lead me to the promised land. And so that's the process we're going to show. So hope you'll check that out.
By the way, that you just gave a great tidbit of advice for any business that was listening. And that is, so many times I think organizations or business owners try to shortcut things or shortcut the process. And to your point, sometimes, even though, we think we might be able to do something, but stick with that process. And it's like you said, it's going to take you to the promised land. I like that analogy. I think that's really true.
Well, and it seems like it should be easier, especially for us if we've done it so many times, but it's hard every time. And it isn't hard to come up with a message. It's really hard to come up with the message. The other thing we run into a lot with B2B companies is they may be serving 2 or 3 different audiences. Right?
Oh, great point.
And so then the message has to be, what's the thread that applies? What's the shared pain, the shared experience of all of those different audiences? That's when it gets hard and expensive. And again, we're going to show you the research techniques that we do. And one of the things, and I can't remember who said it, but they said, why do you rob banks for money? Was it Dillinger? And he said, well, that's because that's where the money is. So where's the money here? It's in your customers' heads. Right. And so we're going to show you how to unlock that. And then how do you know you're different, right? Different from what? Who said that? I don't know. I'm going to take that myself. That'll be my quote for posterity. Different from what? Pete Monfre.
That's right.
So competitive intelligence. When's the last time you visited your competitors' websites? Or maybe you're like a lot of people I meet. We don't have any competitors. Does that send you scrambling for the door? When you hear a prospect say that, a client, they maybe need some help, they want to talk to you, say, well, who are your competitors? We don't have any.
Only to hold my composure does it get me to the floor, because usually I'm rolling on the floor laughing. So
trying to hold your composure. I like that.
At this stage in my life, if I tell the clients what's going on, and hopefully they can handle it. I'll try to be a little diplomatic, but there are some days when I just have a belly laugh and I have to roll on the floor when they tell me.
That's the truth.
How special they are. That's right.
It's the truth about marketing. We do. Folks, when you say that, we do laugh, and we don't maybe at your face, but maybe after Starbucks, like we're in our car, we just start flipping out. The thing is, I think we have to expand what a competitor is, right? People aren't thinking this, and actually it gets really difficult if you're in a super fragmented business like marketing. Who's our competitors? I don't know. No, I have an idea, but it's a national market. It's fragmented. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, what it means is what are the other options that a prospect has available to solve his problem? Okay,
Exactly.
it might not be another thing like you or a piece of software or a platform. It could even be the what I call the invisible competitor of not doing nothing, right? Don't forget about that one. That one will get you every time.
Or what about the emerging one, Pete, too? There's always somebody that's coming up that you don't know about. And
You
it's
don't
like,
even know they're there. Yeah.
that's right. And by the way, many times they're offering a message that's gaining momentum and people are thinking, whoa. And then all of a sudden, when you finally do become aware of them, they're a major threat. It's like, it's
Well,
kind of,
and this sounds a little bit cocky, but one reason I laugh is because usually when they say that, it's with a business that I've helped about a dozen times already, like the same type of business. It's like, well, I actually know I've worked for your competitors,
right.
and so I know they exist, or it was a bad dream that I had. Let me show another slide really quick. I'm just going to show it to the viewers, but it's a slide of the human brain, because I want to talk about this for just a minute. So important. And Oren Clapp has a book called Pitch Anything, and he talks about this, how our brains process information, because at the center of this you have, imagine your message is a grain of sand on a humongous beach, a giant stretch of beach. From a sensory perspective, we're swimming in messages 24 hours a day. I have a feeling there's some sort of Google ad network in my brain when I'm sleeping. I'm not sure of it, but it's a conspiracy theory that I have. But in that sea, this is where understanding how the brain works is super important, especially if you have a technical offer and you have 20 different things that you want to get across. Here's why it won't work. So I have a picture up here. It says, there's the lizard brain, which is your brain stem, your amygdala. It's the first part of the brain that evolved, right? We call it the gatekeeper. This is the part of your brain that decides on what you should pay attention to at any given moment, right? Which is, what is the objective of a great message? It's to grab somebody's cognition, right? Out of a sea of distracting noise. And so in order to do that, we have to start with, it's essentially Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The lizard brain looks at it like, hey, should I eat it? Should I kill it? Should I run away with it? Should I have sex with it? That's pretty much its criteria. You have to hit some kind of nerve. Why does sex sell? Okay? Amygdala, he's opening the door to the middle part of the brain, and that's where analysis happens, right? You're not there yet, because the top part of the brain, you got to get past up there where decisions are made emotionally. Those are your emotional centers at the top of the brain, the neocortex, right? And you got to go in order.
Online?
I am, yeah. I could show it to you if the
No, I don't need
viewers
to.
will.
No,
Oh, all right.
As long as the listeners are seeing it.
It's a nice illustration I made, but you have to kind of go in order. And one mistake, because we're gonna talk about things that we see that are mistakes. One way is starting off with a very technical type of message or an avalanche of information that instantly puts someone in an analysis mode, right?
Right.
And what happens there is, it doesn't get passed to the decision maker. It kind of gets stuck right there, right? And Oren talks about in his book, you grab them with emotion, you move quickly to what appeals to the lizard brain. In other words, whatever you understand their pain. Why? Because you've been interviewing your customers. At a granular level what their problem is and the dynamics of it and how it affects them, right? You know the pain. That's what's going to strike them and get handed up to the next section. You're going to make a case for the solution and understanding of the pain. They're going to make a decision based on emotion. It goes in that order. And, violate that at your own risk. And so I wanted to share that because it's a great book. It's called How to Pitch Anything. And what's so relevant to me is that we just see it all the time where people glaze over. I think that's the clue, right? But so
Can I try to add something that
please do. I'm just talking in circles.
No. But I'm hoping this might even simplify this for our listeners. Okay. I'd like to ask the question of listeners just for a second. Have you ever walked into, it could be a sales presentation, it could be a situation, it could even be a job interview, for example, where you walk out and you say to yourself, "Oh, I wish I would have said," and then fill in the blank. You left something important on the table that you thought was of value, but you never brought it up or you didn't say it, okay? In my opinion, even getting the message right is critical just like that. You don't want to have that mistake where you go, "Oh, I wish we would have said this instead," because you fill in the blank. Some one of the competitors is doing, it's like,
Right.
so this is trying to get it right to begin with so you don't have to walk out of anything. I mean, so it's whether it's in person or it's in your materials, your social media, you want that message to be refined and working. And I think that that's, really key. And all of us do this, like, when we go in for a sales presentation, don't we all put together our 90-second elevator pitch of what we want to say? Don't we come up with our 10 to 12 talking points? I mean, it's kind of the same thing for this type of message. You better put some effort into that so you know that those messages are going to resonate and really hit, like you were talking about, in all of the different areas, whether it's
Well,
some of the basics, the emotional.
and that speaks to the webinar that we're having, and you can check it out. There's a link in the comments. But you know, when I talked earlier about the positioning statement, and so let me go ahead and share my screen. We do this in a couple of steps here,
Okay.
if you care out there, but we're getting better at it. So this is a positioning statement template, which is, there's a bunch of different ones, but
Yeah.
herein lies your answer. Now we're going to walk you through every part of this in the webinar, but I just wanted to hit on it real quick. This is Jeffrey Moore's positioning template, and he wrote Crossing the Chasm and Inside the Tornado, and Jeffrey Moore, look him up, Geoffrey with a G-E-O on the front there. But so this is the format. For target customer, right, for whom, who, statement of need or opportunity, problem, that's where a problem statement. This is, of course, in language from the 70s probably. The product service name, okay, is a product or service category. Is this the type of thing? That statement of key benefit, what it delivers, compelling reason to buy, the value prop. Unlike primary competitive alternative, our product, how it's different.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2 sentences, they have said everything they need to say about the entire deal. What somebody needs to know about the company. What's the brand, what it does, what problem it solves, what category it's in.
Right.
And that's why I like to use this. Now, it's a very formal statement, but let's say that you met, the old CEO in the elevator deal where the elevator pitch came from. And what if you had a version of this that you could nail off in 1 sentence or 2 sentences in under 60 seconds, under 50 seconds, that told him everything that he needed to know in that moment, or she.
That's exactly kind of where I was going with this.
That's
perfect.
powerful. That's what it looks like when you get it right. And then what if you have all 20 of your salespeople
Yeah, on the same
saying
page.
that same thing, right? Or some slight variation of it. It's okay to internalize it and change a few words here and there, but it starts with a process it's so hard to say what the statement of pain, the statement of need, the opportunity is unless you've talked to your customers. It's impossible to know what differentiates yourself if you haven't done competitive intelligence. And I don't give a shit who's, I get argued with them on this point. No, I know my market pretty well. I've been working in this thing for 20 years. Yeah, right. When's the last time that you even Google searched what your potential customer might be searching and then looked at and spent an hour or two? When's the last time? Let's be serious. I'm not trying to dog on you. I'm probably guilty of it too. If the answer is more than 3 years ago, you're screwed, right? You have no idea what's going on in the marketplace. So whatever you claim to be a differentiator probably isn't, right? Or even, here's the beauty of this too, by the way, differentiation. I get so fired up about this stuff. The cool thing about many of our clients that are in that sort of middle ground, they're not tiny, they're not huge, they're in the mid ground, right? Maybe they have 5 employees, they have 10, they have 100 employees. They're in that middle ground. The reality is when we do the the research, and it isn't a huge deal, right? When people hear the word research, they think of this crushing, giant, expensive, time-consuming thing. No, it's not, man. We do competitive analysis in 5 days, right? We know everything that's going on out there in the market and how they're presenting themselves so that we can make sure that we're different, right? But we often find nobody in the market has a clear position at all. To me, that says the opportunity is just to have one. It takes a little pressure off of having the exact right one, when just having one's an advantage.
No,
but that's the case.
This is what used to drive me crazy, when people would put together a mission statement, or it's just that we got to have that for our website, or we have to say something, or we have to have something on the wall. It's exactly what you're just saying. It's ridiculous unless it's going to be authentic and true to your point. So I think that's really
yes, and I mean, there's another hard part, like really looking at your offering from a completely objective level, and accepting what's true, and then extrapolating this into that, so that it works in that Venn diagram. I mean, that's where it gets hard, okay? Now, that's where people like us come along. This is what you can learn in the webinar. I'll punch that thing again. I'm gonna, as we say in the show business, we're gonna plug the webinar again, and we hope you'll check it out. We're going to show you that it's not really as hard as it seems if you have a good process, right? And we've had to have good processes in order to do our jobs, and we're just going to share that with you and work with you. If you've bought the appropriate ticket, we will work with you personally, and you will come out of this with a message. We're not going to just talk about this stuff like we do every Thursday at 11 o'clock on LinkedIn. And if you follow us, everybody says, where do I see this program? You got to follow us, man. You've got to be in our cult, right? The Bill and Pete's Big Adventure cult.
And if anything, at least once a week, they can find out what the weather's like in Wisconsin, and then we can talk about
and in Austin,
like in Austin, and we got it. It's like, how good is that?
You can make better decisions. You can avoid getting ripped off, and you can also find out what the weather is in 2 different parts of the country. Does it get any better than that? And that is a clean, clear message. But
that's exactly right.
We really do hope that you took something away from this. But wrap it up. What's your thought on today's episode and messaging?
Well, I think there's so much. I think, like you talked about, it's got to be authentic. It's got to be emotional. I think that you've got to really do something that separates you from your competitors. So, like, what really is your compelling message? I think all of that's key. I think, when you're putting something together, you talked about it, doing a little research. And I would even go further than competitive research. And I would say, talking to your customers and finding out what hole you actually fill or solve for them. I think that's going to be key. Or even refining the message. So, like, even once you've got your message together, let's test it and let's make sure that it really does hit with the audiences. And so,
well, most messages are really a hypothesis at first, right?
Yeah.
It has to be tested. Now, if you're not doing these things, then you're probably struggling with it. It isn't a matter of whether you do it right or wrong. There's a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things. But if the outcomes aren't what you're looking for, and if you're frustrated that people aren't getting it, or that people aren't excited, or people aren't noticing, right? Maybe you have a huge look. We have a client. That's a really key part. They had the highest bounce rate we've ever seen on their website. It was 97%, and they had the lowest time on site that we've ever seen, which was 43 seconds on their site, right? First thing we did was rewrite that site after we put a strategy in place. We had the plan in place. So first thing we tackled was we just had to read. The site looked good and it worked fine and the UI was great. It just had the wrong language. And so when we fixed that, really within about a week of Google indexing, it took Google a good 30 days to index the dang thing. But when it did, people are staying on the site 2 minutes and 14 seconds. The bounce rate is 72%. It almost normalized, right? 72 is a little high for my taste, but if you look at the averages, it's about average, right? I want it lower. But just getting it righter, and how did we do it? We interviewed customers. We did competitive analysis. Kudos to this client who actually had the patience and invested in the process to get it right and is now seeing the fruits of that labor and really seeing it like 90 days later. I mean, it's not something that you got to wait 6 months for. You'll see it right away when you nail it. And it feels good to nail it, doesn't it?
Well, like you said, it feels good to do it right. And to your point, congratulations to your client for doing that. That's kind of exciting. Sometimes
and to my team.
Yeah, you just, I think that is excellent, and we've done that too, where we'll test messages for our clients, and it makes a huge difference, because it's sometimes it just is this maybe a little bit of tweaking can really help out. But,
right, and then we didn't touch much on the art part of it. The creative part of it is if you can take these ideas. So let's say you've got your formal positioning statement, and you're still not done really. There's going to be derivatives of that. It may be slightly different for different audiences, but they're going to be simplified versions. And you're going to pair that with a visual. So often when we look at companies' marketing communications, the visuals are really just eye candy. They're just, they don't contribute. It's like a blank billboard to me. Like there's an opportunity to put some message in there and it's wasted on some handshake. And this is the one I like the best. Some stock image. But if you put these things together properly, they say it, a picture says a million words or whatever it is. You put it together with a few words, and
one of the things that I also wanted to talk about, though, besides just the message, Pete, though, and we'll talk about this in the webinar, making sure that the people are consistent with those messages across the different channels too, because sometimes you and I, we've talked about this, where somebody's got one channel and they've got one message, and then on another one they use another, and then on another it's like, that is really, that's kind of scary.
Why?
Or even, exactly.
But why is that a problem? Why it's a problem is the way that B2B buyers have changed, right? In the past, maybe they wouldn't have noticed that. Now they're out there looking for you. They're studying what you have. They're looking at different channels, right? They're seeing the inconsistencies. I did an episode a couple of years ago called Chinks in the Armor, and it was how, the best salesman may have the polished shoes and they've got every little detail down, right? Because at that stage in the game, and I think your marketing is at that top of the funnel area too, right. Really what people are looking for is any flaw in your story. Maybe a shoe that's not quite polished, right? Maybe you're missing a button on that shirt, right? Maybe you've got gold chains and your shirt's all unbuttoned, you got a bunch of hair hanging out. You're not on the short list.
Okay, I'll wear my tie next time.
If you could, I'd appreciate that. And so that's the game, right? And so having these things consistent is how you get over that. And I just don't know any other way to make things consistent than to approach it in sort of a systematic way.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.